Welcome, everybody, to Couch Potato Theater here on the Fandom Podcast Network, where we like to celebrate our favorite movies. You know, if you own your favorite movie digitally or on physical media, however, whenever and however it comes on and you're sitting on the couch, you just sit down and watch it and you enjoy your favorite movie. And that is the definition of what this show is all about. My name is Kevin, and I'm your host for Couch Potato Theater, but I need to get my fellow OK Corrallers or our cowboys. And of course, with me, as always, is my brother of the Fandom Podcast Network and, of course, a co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network. Welcome, Mr. Kyle Wagner. What's up, my friend?
I am glad to be here because, one, I'm coughing like Doc Holliday. I'm full of laudanum. So if anybody is a huckleberry for this podcast, it's me.
Well said. Well said. I hope you feel better, man. Hopefully you're not as bad as Doc Holliday, where he has to change his environment and among other things.
Well, I might be playing a little sicker than I really am. I'm just,
And I could not do the classic Western style. Someone who knows a lot about Westerns and also knows a little bit about the lifestyle and maybe the weapons and maybe the ladies. Bring on Mr. Lee himself. How are you, sir?
Look, it's a pair of Philosophisticates over here. How you doing, gents?
Dastard Lee Fillingsness. I love it. That's good.
I had to have a cowboy name.
He feels a little more like a Johnny Ringo. Just saying.
No, I'd win a fight.
Well, guys, welcome to Couch Potato Theater. And we, of course, are discussing Tombstone because why? Well, as of us recording this is December of 2023. And on December 25th, 1993, Tombstone came to us in the big screen. It's the Fandom Podcast Network. And of course, the reason why I've chosen Tombstone, not just because it is celebrating its 30th anniversary, but this happens to be my favorite Western of all time. And we will definitely get into more of that later. But guys, let's do a little plot description here. After success cleaning up Dodge City, Wyatt Earp moves to Tombstone, Arizona. He wishes to get rich in obscurity. He meets his brothers there, as well as an old friend, Doc Holliday. A band of outlaws that call themselves the Cowboys are causing problems in the region with various acts of random violence and inevitably come into a confrontation with Holliday and the Earps. Pew, 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 pew. Which leads, of course, to a shootout at the OK Corral. All right. Guys, do you have any favorite comment, I guess any favorite quotes that kind of come to your mind? Kyle?
Well, basically anything Doc Holliday says throughout the movie, it comes to mind. This movie is full of great quotes. I mean, seriously, I'll be your huckleberry. I mean, that's great. I could go, I just watched this and you'll have to forgive me because I really do have cold medicine in my system. So my brain's a little foggy, but I mean, literally there's any interaction with Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo is just completely quote worthy the whole time, even if it is in Latin.
Dastard Lee. He's right. It seems like everything that Doc Holliday, Val Kilmer said in this, you got your favorite quotes in this?
I mean, Kylie couldn't come up with anything really. I'm wondering if it's not your game. I know. Let's have a spelling contest. I love that one. That's a good one. Your boys may get me in a rush, but not before I turn your head into a canoe. I mean, that's pure gold.
Yeah, it is.
And then I got to say, I have actually Johnny Tylered somebody once. I was
Johnny Tyler.
Yep. I was bouncing and somebody said something very nice about the bartendress that I had a little thing for. And I bounced the back of his favorite head off of a wall and he hit the ground. And anytime he would move, I just scream at him. And I just left him there for 20 minutes. And then after a while, like I'm talking with people and they're like staring and I'm ignoring him. And this dude's terrified. After a while, I looked at him like, I'm sorry, I forgot you were there. You can go. And literally two of the guys came up later like, did you just steal that from Tombstone? I'm like, no, I did it better.
Well said. If anyone who knows Lee and have seen him in person, they would understand.
I get to call the guy playing Jack Reacher Small. So
Nice.
literally.
Well, as I mentioned, this is my favorite Western in all time, and we'll get into that shortly. But I kind of want to start off about when and where you first saw this film, because I remember the hype for this movie was pretty big, especially with the cast that was coming into this. And the fact that it was a Christmas Day movie release was a big deal too. I remember seeing this on Christmas Day. I don't know if it was before, probably after Christmas, festivities, and I saw it later in the day. Kyle, what about you? Where were you, and what were your thoughts of seeing this movie for the first time?
Honestly, because it was 93, which is one of my last years in Alaska, and I remember this very well. I wanted to see this, and we had a severe cold snap for like 3 weeks where it was like 40 below, and that was the warmest temperature of the day. So I did not get the chance to see this in the theater because it got out because nobody was going to the theaters at all. So I had to catch it on home video when it came out, and it's a phenomenal movie. It is easily one of the top 5 greatest Westerns, in my opinion, of all time. I think it is the defining roles of both Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp in this film, and I think it's one of those movies that it perfected the modern Western, but still paid tribute to the classical Western as well.
Well said. Well said. Lee, what about you? When and where did you first see it?
Well, in true couch potato theater fashion, I probably saw this on TBS, USA, WGN, one of the great 90s stuck at home networks for the first time. I missed this one in theaters. I will also say that this DVD came with me when I moved to Paris, and I was one of the only kids that had a laptop and a DVD player. So people would go over to my apartment, and we would watch this in groups of 12 on a laptop along with others. Got into an argument with my friend Ellen over whether or not Johnny Tyler was actually played by Billy Bob Thornton, and the battery died before we could get to the credits.
That's a great story. First of all, back then your laptop was probably a big screen in Paris.
Yeah, it was actually pretty good size. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Wow. That's great. Yeah, I remember seeing it in the theater, and one of the things that caught me off guard about this film was we knew that we were going to get the big payoff with the OK Corral. We were going to get it because we saw scenes of it in the trailers and all that kind of stuff. But what I thought was fascinating about this film from the get-go was that it's not at the end of the film like a lot of other retellings of this famous scene. And this particular gunfight in this in history, it really marks a turning of the page when it comes to early organized crime by these cowboys and these gangs. And what I thought was interesting was the fact that the OK Corral was in the middle of the film. It's the catalyst for what happens afterwards, where there's a lot of debate up, was it justice? Was it revenge? Was it cold blood killing? A little bit of everything, basically. So, yeah. So that was one of the things I was surprised about, because there was so much good stuff that happened after the OK Corral, because I'm like, oh, it's not going to end here. It keeps going. It keeps going. Lee, did that catch you by surprise at all at the time?
No, probably because I had seen Wyatt Earp before this, the Kevin Costner one, which I think got unfortunately maligned, because I think that's a great movie. But it was kind of like you say. Usually, you get the ultimate battle in the end, and this is the one that everyone knows about. Nobody knows about the rest of it. It's kind of like putting the Battle of Hoth at the beginning of Empire. So
that's a good point. Yeah, Kyle, what about you? The fact that the OK Corral battle was kind of the catalyst for everything else that happened next.
I'm in a little bit of Lee's boat in that while I hadn't seen the Kevin Costner Wyatt Earp, I knew that was a big discussion between Tombstone and that film being out at the same time. So it was kind of a general knowledge that, hey, there is a lot more to this than the OK Corral. This tells a lot more of the story.
Right.
And, I got to be honest with you. It's one of my favorite things about this movie is that the OK Corral isn't the end all be all of the film. And there's so much more to it.
It's a good point. Great point. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you guys about, and I kind of touched on it or teased it a little bit, is where does this movie compare with your other favorite Westerns? And we'll talk about how and get your thoughts on how you compare to other Westerns that talk about the OK Corral. but just Westerns in general, because I grew up watching, all the Clint Eastwood films, a lot of the movies from the 40s and the 50s with my dad. So I've seen a lot of Westerns. That's why Westerns are one of my favorites. But, I connected to the ones I think first, mostly with, the Clint Eastwood films, of course, for obvious reasons, because they were done so well, and the music and, the lone, the high plains drifter guy, and, men of few words type of thing, and really good shot, just looked badass. But the one Western that I saw that I really connected to first, it was my favorite Western for the longest time until this movie came out, was Silverado, because I love the cast. I love the music. There was some fun in it, yet there was, some seriousness in it. And to this date, I think it's probably my second or third favorite film until I saw this one. And the reason why this film is my favorite is because not only is it just the amazing cast that we get here, there's like over 80 different characters that say lines in this, but we get little stories of each of them, which is great. But I think what really makes this film really good is the villains, the cowboys, and the characters that we learn about them and what they go through. I think is fascinating. And so, Lee, I want to go to you next with this. What were some of your favorite Westerns, and where does this one compare?
I love to hear you talk about my favorite Western, Silverado. To me, that one is like the gold standard for me.
That's your favorite?
Yes,
Who
sir.
else?
Absolutely loved it. I'd put this one somewhere in the top 10, maybe not towards the top of it, but it's one like sort of like Doritos. Like if there's Doritos, I'm going to eat them all the time. I'm not going to say that they're the best food ever, but I eat more Doritos than I eat like beef Wellington, So
what's your favorite Doritos? Mine's Cool Ranch. What's yours?
Cool Ranch, pretty close tie with the Nacho. I don't think that they've ever come up with a better one after Cool Ranch came out in like 86. Like they keep trying and it's just lame.
Okay, so where does Tombstone in your Dorito scale? Where is that exactly? I'm trying to figure that out.
I would put it
Okay, for comparison,
Doritos. Yeah.
Okay, for comparison, let's move away from Doritos for a second. For comparison, what are your other top 5 Westerns? So,
I definitely put I'd say like the Ennio Morricone Clint Eastwood trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I just lumped that as one story. I'd put that at probably number 3 or 4. Silverado's up top. Unforgiven, kind of hard to step away from that. Magnificent Seven.
Right.
And then really The Quick and the Dead.
Oh, good.
That was just being a Sam Raimi nerd when that came out and seeing like, oh, he can do this with other stuff.
Yeah.
Just like blew my mind. And I love that one.
That's good stuff right there. So you would definitely put Tombstone in your top 10 then.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm glad you mentioned the Quick and the Dead. We've talked about this on the network before. Maybe we'll visit again. We'll see. But one of the newer ones that really kind of rises for me is Open Range with Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
That one's a really good one too. And Quick and the Dead definitely is up there. Those are
Appaloosa as well.
Oh, good choice. Yeah. Good choice. Yeah. Kyle, where does Tombstone rate in your favorite Westerns, and what are they?
It's probably in my top 5, easily, maybe even top 3, more because of the performances in it than anything. I think that's where Tombstone is really sets itself apart, is with the performances in it. But I like you guys, the Eastwood trilogy, Good, Bad, the Ugly, all of that. But I also think that's a little bit of a different time in how we portrayed Westerns too. You got more of your classic spaghetti Westerns there. Another one for me is Once Upon a Time in the West. That's a classic. Tombstone hit at an interesting time because the Western had kind of been forgotten about at this point in Hollywood. And after Tombstone, it really kind of got forgot about again until I think really a few things here and there. But one of the more modern Westerns I'm a fan of is the remake of 3:10 to Yuma.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Good call. Yeah, definitely.
But I think Tombstone is probably, when you look at it, for me, the biggest combination of Western but Hollywood with it too. In that stayed Western, but because of all the people in it and the amazing performances, there's a little bit of a Hollywood feel to it.
Right.
And when you look back at like the Clint Eastwoods and stuff like that, that doesn't feel quite so much Hollywood. It has a little bit more of an edge to it. Same with Unforgiven, which is a phenomenal film. But there's just something about Tombstone that I think it finds that perfect amalgamation of the two.
Right. Good call. One of the things that I did want to ask you that I alluded to, guys, is how do you compare this movie to other Westerns that talked about either Wyatt Earp or the famous OK Corral shootout? And that's why this one I think is the best personally. And I remember seeing some of the older films as well. And of course I did see Wyatt Earp as well. This one, I think they took special care in trying to recreate what actually happened. And, using all the historical information that they had, trying to keep it as long as it actually happened. Cause I forgot which old one I was watching, but it seemed like the shootout went for like 2 minutes. and in fact, it was like less than 30 seconds. But Lee, what about you? Where does the topic of Wyatt Earp and of course the OK Corral, how do you think they handled it compared to other films?
I honestly think that as in talking about Wyatt Earp, I think Wyatt Earp is a better Wyatt Earp story. There is no character development for Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp at all. He remains exactly the same from start to finish in this. You don't understand how he gets to where he is. And at the end, he pretty much just does as he always has. The Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp is equally as bitter and hard to swallow, but like also you see the kind of pain that's caused him. I would say that would be the thing. I don't think that I'd say the same for Dennis Quaid's Doc Holliday. Much less interesting character, but I would also say that the other Earp boys were much more interesting. I feel Sam Elliott was wasted in this movie, and probably Bill Paxton's weakest performance.
Interesting. The only problem that I had with the shootout in this film is and it's the way that it's cut when you see Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday with the 2-barrel shotgun and he ends up shooting 3 shots. That's the only issue that I have with it, but that was probably done in editing and they didn't catch that or, didn't matter. But Kyle, what about you? The topic of, the OK Corral shootout and Wyatt Earp himself.
I think as far as the shootout goes, I think this one's probably the best film for the shootout. With the Wyatt comparisons to the Wyatt Earp film, I think it's different approaches because I think Kevin Costner really wanted to go into more of the true story of Wyatt Earp, and he did. And I think for some people they really liked it. For some people they found it a little boring. I'll be honest with you, it maybe even a little long. I think Kurt Russell's performance as Wyatt Earp, even though it doesn't have the range or the character growth quite like what Kevin Costner did, I think there's something people can just identify with it more. And I think sometimes too especially with a Western, maybe we're not looking for that as much deep, in-depth character development as we are just seeing a character we know and seeing consistency with the character. And I think on that aspect of it, Kurt Russell did a good job. And I think he did give Wyatt Earp just enough range for within the confines of what this film was trying to do and the story was trying to tell. And I think that's the biggest thing is that the Wyatt Earp movie was trying to tell a little bit different story than what Tombstone was.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I do, even though it is a little long and there's certain parts of the Wyatt Earp film that I don't think do as well in this film, you do get a backstory of the character, and that is fascinating alone to watch that. So yeah, I agree. Well, guys, I want to get into the cast here because this cast is just freaking amazing here. And I'm just going to go through the slideshows here. I'll name them off. We got Kurt Russell, of course, Val Kilmer, Powers Boothe, Michael Biehn,
Stephen Lang.
Stephen Lang, thank you very much. Yes, Stephen Lang. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah. Forgetting her name right now. What's her name? Dana Delany. There we go. Yeah. A wonderful cast here. Even Charleston Heston makes an appearance in there. There's Sheriff Biehn, Billy Bob Thornton getting slapped around there. And then, of course, there's a good cast of the picture of the Cowboys there, guys. Lee, I want to start with the cast with you. This is pretty big here. We also got Thomas Hayden Church as Billy Clanton. A lot of people, Michael Rooker, Sherman McMasters, Harry Carey Jr. as Marshal Fred White. It just goes on. Billy Zane is Mr. Fabian. And, of course, who is it? Mr. 90210 himself. Jason Priestley. Even Frank Stallone is in this one. It's just like, it's amazing how big this cast is.
Don't forget Terry O'Quinn.
Yeah, Terry O'Quinn. I need you guys for this. This is just huge. Lee, your thoughts on the cast here?
Poorly used. I think the reason why I was brought on, I think, for this is I made a comment years ago that this is a okay movie that is brought to greatness by one performance, and that's Val Kilmer's. I think that Stephen Lang, after seeing what he did as General Pickett in Gettysburg the same year, his whole thing was loudmouth coward. He never did anything. Michael Biehn was a joke through most of the movie. He does his big gun twirling thing, and then it's like, oh, I could do that with a cup. He's just there to be laughed at. This is about the only time that he seemed even sort of cool, and it's because he's just quoting the Book of Revelation, which is a cliche. Powers Boothe never did anything. Billy Zane, this is worse than his performances in Zoolander. And I've liked Billy Zane. I saw them all, but the behind the scenes stuff, Michael Biehn, I just listened to an interview with him the other day. He's still mad about this movie. He only said 5 words to the director. 2 of them were hello there, and 2 of them were go and yourself. And I won't say the one that went in between those, but it was a rough situation. But I think Val Kilmer saved this movie. Russell was okay, but I think he was better in Soldier. And Dana Delany, oh man, she's fun to look at and kind of nice, but like I would have liked to see more from literally anybody, especially Thomas Hayden Church. I really was a big fan of him from Wings, and seeing what he's been able to do over the last couple decades. I'm like, oh cool, it's what was his name, Lloyd, and then he didn't do anything.
Yeah. So. Kyle, your thoughts, and what do you think of Lee's comments? He's not a fan.
I can understand where Lee is coming from. From my perspective, this is one of those times where I think you have too big of a cast and not enough time for everybody. And I think in some of these cases too, with some of these people, we think of them now because they're bigger stars than when they were then. And so there's some of these people like a Thomas Hayden Church and a few others that were just kind of coming up the ladder. I mean, even Priestley, he did this just basically because he was trying to do anything to get out of the 90210 trap he had been in. I've heard him talk about that in interviews. I think this is one of those things where you had a bunch of, especially at the top of the cast, with a bunch of guys who probably really wanted to work together, and this became the movie that they could do it with. And again, without question, Val Kilmer's performance is a standout of this movie, and this is why, and is the number one reason I think most people love this movie. But I personally, there is something about seeing the 4 of them together on screen is just pretty magical. And you can say what you will about it. It might have felt like some phoned in performances, but sometimes you just have a chemistry that works. And I think at least with the 4 of them, the chemistry worked.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to disagree with all of you guys, and here's why. First of all, yes, Doc Holliday, his performance, Val, is obviously the highlight of this. A lot of people talk about this, and we are going to have that discussion next. But first of all, a lot of these characters, Kyle, and this is where I'm going to disagree with you, were known. At least it was to me as a fan. I know who Sam Elliott was. I knew who Bill Paxton was. I knew who Powers Boothe was. I knew who Michael Biehn was. I knew who Charleston Heston was. But the difference I think that this film is I don't think any of these are phoned in. I just think that the moments they had were just short and sweet, or, the movie could have been like 4 hours long. And there is the director's cut, which we'll also touch on a little bit later. I think that they did an excellent job for what they had. Like I said, this had over 80 speaking roles. And I think that a lot of these, there's a few scenes like I would have liked to have seen Thomas Hayden Church do a little bit more, but I think his moment was in the OK Corral, especially when he looks right before he's about to pull his gun. Magnificent scene right there. And he didn't have to say anything because his look said everything. But when I look back at the moments that Bill Paxton had, he's the kind of dreamer guy, and he's the one, that gets shot and killed. And the whole looking at the light before you die thing was foreshadowed. Sam Elliott seeing the little kid in the street, just these things that were unsaid. Completely disagree with what you guys are saying about the acting in this. That's why this movie's so good. Not because Val Kilmer is the one that overshines everyone, but because everyone has their moment. And I can go back to almost any of these characters, with the exception of maybe a couple of them, and go, they had their moment. They had their moment. Even McMaster's character, he had his moment right from the very beginning when they start shooting the women as well, or raping the women. You realize he's starting to question why he's with these guys. There's all kinds of these little moments that they get. It might not be much, but they are not afterthoughts, and they are definitely not mailing it in. I think they got the best out of everyone in this for the amount of time that they had. And I thought the chemistry was great with a lot of these guys as well. Now, going into Val Kilmer, guys, let's talk about this for a second. Maybe a few more seconds. We know that his performance here is the one that most people remember it and most people talk about it here. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on if he was nominated, because I always felt he was robbed of at least a nomination. Do you think it was, first of all, an Oscar nominated type of role? If not, then say your piece. But if so, where would you put him into the Academy Awards, which happened? Because now remember, this came out in Christmas time, and a lot of Academy Award movies, it's kind of done with marketing and recency bias, that they will come out later in the year because the Academy Awards are early the next year, and it's fresh in the Oscar committee's minds of what comes out. So that's why a lot of those Oscar nominated roles would come out later in the year, which this one did. I could probably think that maybe, Kurt Russell was maybe hoping to get a nomination because he had his moments. But I want to go with you, first of all, Kyle. So in the leading actor role, first of all, for the 66th Academy Awards, which was held Monday, March 21st, 1994. The winner was Tom Hanks for Philadelphia, but the other nominees were Daniel Day-Lewis for In the Name of the Father, Lawrence Fishburne for What's Love Got to Do with It, Anthony Hopkins for Remains of the Day, and Liam Neeson, Schindler's List. That's lead actor roles. That's a tough group there. Then we get into the actor in a supporting role, which is where I thought that maybe there could have been a spot for Val. Here's who he went up against. The winner was Tommy Lee Jones for The Fugitive. Other nominees were Leonardo DiCaprio, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Ralph Fiennes for Schindler's List, John Malkovich for In the Line of Fire, and Pete Postlethwaite for In the Name of the Father. Do you see his acting in this movie worth a nomination? If so, where would you take someone out and put him in?
Okay, so this also comes down to how the Academy looked at things between then and now, because I think if it's now, he gets a nomination. I'm going to say that right now. If it's modern day, he gets a nomination. But Tombstone was the kind of movie that the Academy really wasn't going to throw a bunch of stuff at. Let's be honest. I think I think you could give him a nomination for actor in a supporting role. Maybe take out Pete Postlethwaite for In the Name of the Father and put him in there. But nobody was beating Tommy Lee Jones for The Fugitive that year. That was the role everybody was talking about. This was a killer year for film. You had Schindler's List. Yep. Nobody was beating Tom Hanks out of Philadelphia. That was especially at that era and what it was dealing with and everything that was going on. This was a case where a lot of the Academy Awards, you're either dealing with the Steven Spielberg masterpiece, or you're dealing with timeliness, or you're just dealing with one of the all-time great actor in a supporting role runs. But I do think you could have easily gotten Val Kilmer nominated for the role. And I think if it was modern day Academy Awards, he would receive the nomination.
Great point. Lee, what about you?
I would have replaced Tommy Lee Jones with him. I still would have given the award to Ralph Fiennes that year, but I think that was just...
So you're talking he could have squeezed into a lead actor role.
No, I'm saying
Or supporting role.
I think his performance was as good as Tommy Lee Jones's, but I feel like Ralph Fiennes in Schindler's List really was the kind of the standout that year, personally. I mean, Fugitive did the big business and everything, but the insanity of his the bathroom cleaning scene just still sticks with me like nothing else did that year. Yeah. But I'd say his was easily as good as Tommy Lee Jones that year. And probably, other than people misquoting the farmhouse, hen house, outhouse, and shithouse line, I don't think, that, and I don't care. Like, there's nothing quotable about his performance. It's not really in the lexicon the way that Val's is.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. Well, of course, Tommy Lee won that one, and also Tom Hanks won for Philadelphia, and then the actress in the leading role, in case you're curious, winner was Holly Hunter for the piano, and supporting actress went to, of course, Anna Paquin in the piano as well. And of course, the Schindler's List won for Best Picture. Other nominees for Best Picture were The Fugitive, Name of the Father, Piano, and Remains of the Day. A lot of the similar movies got the nods there. So, well, that's a big topic all the time, and I always say that I felt he at least should have gotten nominated. And I'm thinking Pete Postlethwaite. Yeah, I remember watching that movie a long time ago, and just like, I just don't get it. But well, that was the world we were living in at the time. Right. So, all right. So, 2 hours 10 minutes, Lee. Not a bad running time, would you say?
Yeah, I like a long one. So, hey-o.
So, budget of $25 million, gross worldwide $73 million. It did well. Premiered in the movie theaters 6 months before Lawrence Kasdan's Wyatt Earp, as you were talking about earlier, Lee, on December 24th, 1993. And during its opening weekend, the film opened in third place at the U.S. box office behind The Pelican Brief and Mrs. Doubtfire. So, pretty competitive December there, guys. Yes. Okay. I want to ask you guys, what makes this movie different, and how does it stand out from others for you? Or is it just another Western, Lee?
I'll keep on coming back to the performance. There's something magnetic about Val Kilmer in this movie that he kind of hadn't had since some of his earlier movies.
Like Top Secret?
Yeah, Top Secret, definitely. But even, Real Genius, Top Gun, there was a period there, and then he kind of, as much as his performance was great in The Doors, it's not, I need to watch this.
Right.
And as much as I've gone on about, Wyatt Earp being a better Wyatt Earp movie, I don't want to watch that on a regular basis. Kind of the same, with, I don't really want to watch In the Name of the Father all that often, even though it was a fantastic movie. I think this one hits perfectly for the title of the show. This is a couch potato movie. This is one that when I'm back home with my stepdad, my brothers, and, the nephews, and, even some of my sisters like this one, plop down on the couch at any point in this movie, you'll watch it to the end. It is really fun. It's crazy. And you just, oh, wait, Doc's about to say something, so you just kind of wait for that. It's they did that really well. And, to the point where, like, I learned how to do all the fun tricks that he does, not only with the pistols, but with the tin cup as well.
Nice.
I've done them on movie sets.
We're going to talk about the shoot 'em ups and the gun soon. Kyle, what about you? What makes this movie different from others? How does it stand out for you?
I think the reason why it stands out, it's a twofold. One, it's an epic performance by Val Kilmer, in my opinion, his greatest performance of his career. Two, having Kurt Russell be his straight man is just brilliant casting. And that's what I think makes it work even more. The other thing about this movie, it is a great cast. It is a lot of people you recognize, a lot of names, and a lot of different generational names as well. So there was something for everybody in this film. This film is so incredibly well paced as well. There's never what I would call really long drag out times in this movie. it keeps a good brisk pace, and like Lee said, it makes it the perfect couch potato theater film where you hop in at any time. You're either going to get a great Doc Holliday scene or you're going to get a great action scene, and
Right.
that's what makes it magical. And it hit, like I said, it hit on the perfect Hollywood formula. Give us a good cast, give us a good paced movie, and you're good to go. With like the Kevin Costner Wyatt Earp, there's a lot of slow times in that film, and so it makes it a little bit harder to rewatch. Kevin, it goes by your criteria. It is one of the most easily rewatchable films ever made.
Yeah, it's true. I could drop in on it anytime and continue watching it. Let's talk about our favorite scenes or moments in the film, guys, because there's a lot to choose from. I just want to start off by, first of all, the Billy Bob Thornton scene. This is when you really kind of get to the type of Wyatt Earp that Kurt Russell is going to get into here. And it's a great scene. You're going to stand there and make you bleed, pull that smoke wagon. Just totally intimidates this guy and puts him in his place. And that's one of my favorite scenes. I love it. But there's other scenes too that I like. And a lot of them have to do with Dana Delany. I love the portrayal that Dana Delany does here with the woman he ends up with. And I love how she loves being a woman. She likes, men. She wants to, do whatever she wants, have fun, and kind of those moments that are kind of opening up Wyatt Earp's eyes in this film. Kurt Russell kind of like, wondering who the hell is this? This is a refreshing moment. And she's hot and she's, likes to, ride horses and run them out of them. I really enjoyed the moments here. And the fact that she witnesses Wyatt Earp in pretty much his worst moments and sees the world that he lives in and has to deal with, and yet still ends up with him, I think is great. Lee, what are your favorite moments in this?
I really do like Doc and Ike and the boys playing poker.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like I said, I'm a bouncer, and the number of people who hate each other that will drink right next to each other and be complete jackasses to each other like this. It's the one thing that I find truly realistic about this movie. It's like, oh yeah, you're just a bunch of criminals all hanging out. Partly because, he's got the great line, I don't know, how about a spelling contest? Why, Ike, whatever do you mean? I have not yet begun to defile myself. I mean, it's just, it's a great scene. I think really has it. And I think the way that it plays out against that final game of poker that they have in the convalescent home at the end.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important note for the movie. So that's probably my favorite scene.
That's gut-wrenching too. Yeah. Kyle?
It's interesting when I think about this because there's a few scenes that I really like. One you're actually looking at right now where you see them all together. And it's great foreshadowing because they think they're finally getting away from everything.
Yeah, when all the brothers and their wives are together, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to just a quick shout out here because we didn't talk about it in the cast. Paula Malcolmson, who played Sam Elliott's wife in this film, went on to be, in my opinion, the greatest modern Western show of all time, Deadwood.
Yeah.
And so she has definitely been in some of the more historical Western things to be put out there in the modern era. But the scene between Michael Biehn and Doc Holliday in the final shootout between the two of them is just great. I love that scene. I honestly, even though it's one of the most crazy scenes in the film, when they're caught in the crossfire and Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp just loses it and just marches on everybody, and the fact that the Cowboys become worse shots than stormtroopers during that during that scene. But it's just so powerful because it's literally, it's all the emotion Wyatt Earp had built up in him.
No. Yeah.
But too, and you got other scenes. Powers Boothe plays a special kind of crazy in this film.
Curly Bill, yes. Yeah. He was good in this. Yeah, great stuff, great scenes. But you know what, Lee, we got to talk about guns here, because I know you have and I want to give you a shout out too, because you have you're a stuntman yourself. You've worked with all kinds of weapons, and I know that when it comes to weapons, safety is number one in your book. And so, but you've dealt with all kinds of weapons, but I want to give your thoughts on some of the main weapons here that are used in this movie, because some of them are very iconic. And of course, you know, we've got the Colt single action army right there. We've got, of course, the
Buntline special,
Buntline special, the famous Wyatt Earp one there. And we see some of them in action here. I want to get your thoughts on the weapons on these.
I mean, these are kind of the classic par excellence cowboy guns. I imagine these are more common in movies than they were in these street fights back then, just because they're hard to come by in the truly pre-industrial age. But the Colt single action, aka the Peacemaker, the original marketing line was, and all of these are basically variations on that. Even the Buntline special, the Lightning, these are all variations on this mechanism. The advertisement was, God created all men equal, and Sam Colt made sure it stayed that way. This is a very reliable weapon, very accurate weapon, even in short barrel distances. This is a lot of fun to shoot, and very easy to maintain. Other weapons of the time you would see, like Schofield revolvers, Remingtons, all sorts of stuff. More moving parts, more intricacy, and from a prop master standpoint, they fall apart. So you probably would have seen more variety in the pistols in history. But as you can see, basically the only thing that changes on this is barrel length. But these are absolutely the most fun guns to play with. As an armorer, when I come on set and I bring these, I always do a safety thing like, hey, my name's Lee. I'm the fight choreographer and the armorer here. I have gun-shaped objects. I am going to put them in the hands of the people that are allowed to have them. If I see any gun-shaped objects in the hands of people that are not allowed to have them, I will treat them like real guns, and I will treat you like a real threat. You don't want to find out what I do. I say after that, when I'm doing a Western, I know everybody wants to come play with these. Come to me after we're shooting. I will make sure that the weapons are clear. You can do the cowboy thing, because the second you put this in your hand, you will twirl it. You will try to do a quick draw. There is something about these that is so, it speaks to the imagination of our generation, my nieces and nephews' generation, our parents' generations. This is something that is in the DNA of everybody that loves action movies. They're just fantastic, terrifyingly accurate and fun weapons. So
two things I want to ask you. First of all, there's this Stevens 10 gauge side-by-side shotgun that is favored by Wyatt Earp's character here. If I remember correctly, was it the 10 gauge also in Appaloosa, and it was a character of its own?
Yes, sir, it was. So these are actually, I think in Appaloosa it was an 8 gauge.
So
it's
gauge.
even bigger. The weird thing with shotguns is the smaller the number, the bigger the barrel.
Yeah.
Every other gun, it's like, oh yeah, a bigger number means bigger bullet. But shotguns, go figure.
Right.
And they've even explained it to me. I still think it's stupid.
The other thing I want to ask you too was, I forget who it was. I was watching something somewhere. Someone had an issue. Oh, it was one of those YouTube videos where there was a quick draw specialist talking about gun use, right? And I think it was, I forget the woman's name, but she's one of the top quick draw people in the world right now when it comes to single action. And she's really good at it. I don't remember her name, but she was talking about like John Wick's and Tom Cruise's. But she talked about the famous Johnny Ringo and Doc Holliday shootout, where Doc Holliday has the cigarette in his hand and he doesn't let go of it, and he actually uses the gun underneath his arm to quick draw and then shoot Johnny Ringo in the head. And she was complaining, saying that, you know, I think she gave that a low mark for obvious reasons, because that would get your arm would get in the way and blah blah blah. And I counter it going, it's Doc freaking Holliday. He doesn't drop his cigarette when he shoots one of the most deadliest pistoliers in the West. And it just looks so freaking cool. And maybe he was using it kind of like to cover his draw or something. She didn't bring that up, but I want to get your thoughts on that scene and the way that was shot.
Here's the thing. It's actually a very smart draw, especially compared to the standard way. And I'm going to actually kind of do a little demonstration here just to show the mechanical difference.
Okay. All right.
So I don't have anything on me right now, but
all right, hold on. Let me get you in the picture here. Hold on.
Okay. Okay. So say I've got my my 6-iron right here. What I have to do is I have to raise up,
right,
and then bring the weapon. So this rotation has to happen after this. So even when I'm fast, boom, I have to go. If I'm bladed like this is how far I have to go.
But the fact she was making the argument for where his arm was above it while he was holding the cigarette.
Yeah, it's an invalid argument. The way he's holding it keeps his weapon out of the way. It is a very good draw.
Gotcha.
And it's the kind of thing like, yeah, we want our cowboy quick draws. I always go back to Silverado. That is the best quick draw duel on film. When Cobb goes down, oh God, it's beautiful. But
that is a good one.
As much as I've talked smack about parts of this movie, that draw is everything it needs to be.
Can I just also give a shout out to the end of Quigley Down Under too?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Kyle, I know you're not a big gun enthusiast as Lee or I is, but did you have any thoughts on the pew pews in this film?
It's some of the best Western draws. You could tell they really researched it. And yeah, I'm not maybe as big a gun enthusiast, but growing up in my family, guns were a big part of it because of my dad's profession, and he has a love for guns. And so I respect and I do research it, and I agree with Lee that it's one of the best draw scenes ever, as far as just the practicality of it making sense when it happens. But I mean, just across the board, I felt like this is probably how it would have went down in the West at the time. I think they really tried to pay specific attention to that. Well, and not over Hollywood it.
Well, Lee, you know how you turn yourself to the side, in a draw like that? I don't remember them doing that a lot in other Westerns back in the day. A few, maybe some of the Clint Eastwoods or something like that. But I remember it really was pronounced in Appaloosa. The way that Viggo Mortensen went in for that final duel, how he really turned himself to the side, because if he did get shot, it would be, he would minimize any damage to him. But I did notice that in this film a little bit more. And you had obviously made that point just a few minutes ago. So well said, guys. Well said. Had to do the guns with you, Lee. All right, guys, this is the Fandom Podcast Network. We are, of course, talking about Tombstone, the 30th anniversary. And as always, we have a little movie trivia. Okay. All right. It looks like Lee dropped out for a second. We'll get him back here. Kyle, what do you know about trivia here? We got some stuff here. Wyatt Earp died in 1929, having never seen so much as scratched by a single bullet. The fact his name is known above, for instance, Virgil's the Marshal of Tombstone at the time of the famous gunfight, is largely due to Wyatt's self-promotion. Before his death, he walked in Hollywood circles, and John Wayne once claimed to have met him, apparently modeling his famous walk on that of Wyatt Earp. Kyle, one of the things that is brought up in this movie is the fact that he doesn't really get injured in this. He's a very calculated gunsman.
There's a couple of points I want to make to this. Yes, obviously he's famous for his gunsman. One of the things I was watching at this time, and it kind of resonated with me, is Wyatt Earp was the LeBron James of his time.
Explain.
If you watch this movie, everywhere he goes, they're trying to convince him to be the lawman. Like, hey, sign with our team. Be with our team. He's that well known. LeBron James right now is probably realistically the most worldwide known name on the planet. Let's really be honest right now. The only person who might be bigger than him is Taylor Swift. But
this is true. Yeah.
But when you're talking about like in this, you could really use that analogy. And Lee, you're back. I'm going to ask you this. Kevin talked about kind of the Wyatt Earp had never been known for taking a bullet, his fame and everything like that. And I compared it to Wyatt Earp might have been like the LeBron James of his time, just known wherever he went, and anybody, if he thought he was available, would be trying to recruit him to be their lawman.
Well, before you answer that, Lee, the reason why I mentioned this in this trivia is because one thing I've noticed about this film, and I also noticed it watching some recent Dirty Harry films, and also when you compare Clint Eastwood in his Westerns, is that all of the shots that Wyatt Earp takes in this film are very calculated. He doesn't waste bullets. And it reminds me of like movies like Sudden Impact and a lot of Dirty Harry films. He's got a 6-shot weapon here, a 44 Magnum in those, and he always hits his target, and he doesn't shoot anyone more than once. He doesn't have to because that gun's very powerful. But I noticed that Wyatt Earp in this film took calculated shots and was cool under fire. Obviously, that's how Wyatt Earp was done in real life. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's kind of, there's a mindset that happens when you fight, and fight a lot. Now you either go entirely into like an instinctive state where it's like, I gotta, punch back, boom, boom. But if you're a calculated fighter, you're going to put yourself in a position that is the best way to shoot and then not get shot yourself. And shot counting is a real good one. The quick draw is the easiest way to not hit something. There's been just a ton of studies of shootings. 85% of small arms fire within a range of 20 feet or less misses. So when you shoot a lot, you can up those numbers, but also
Right.
like if you take the time, you start breathing, you start doing things right, you're going to hit your target a little bit better. I was also going to go back before I got cut off. You were talking about taking us sideways.
Yes.
It's called blading, current military terminology.
That's when you stand sideways to make
Yep.
yourself less of a target.
Less of a target, but it's also a lot easier to take recoil from your weapon because it doesn't just stop at your shoulder and hurt. You can actually use the muscle process to control your weapon and distribute recoil. A lot of interesting stuff with it, and also he's always wearing a trench coat with that, which changes his silhouette, which makes it, even though he's the same size, makes it harder to gauge where he's at. So like even when they're doing that final shootout at the creek, you see like he got shot in the coat, but not his body. And that coat is open and billowing. So everywhere that they might be aiming isn't necessarily where he's at, even though they see it attached to him. Andrew Jackson fought a duel that way. Even though you're not supposed to wear cloaks, he wore a cloak. He took a shot in the cloak and then returned his fire and shot the guy straight in the head. So it's an old dirty trick. Andrew Jackson. Yeah,
that's cool. I didn't even consider that. That's cool. They looked really cool showing up the OK Corral with those coats too. So very cool. So I got some more movie trivia here for you guys. Some casting what ifs. Willem Dafoe was originally the original choice to play Doc Holliday, but Buena Vista refused to distribute the film if he was cast due to Dafoe's role in the controversial The Last Temptation of Christ. Kyle, Willem Dafoe is Doc Holliday. What do you think? I think he could.
Thank God that didn't happen.
No, you don't think so?
Too crazy. Too little too much off the chain.
What about you, Dastardly?
I would love that so much. That would be, I'm your Huckleberry. Like, just, I'm seeing every line. I will not be part of. I have not begun to defile myself. The crazy Green Goblin agent, what's his name from Boondock Saints? This would be the most amazing thing to happen in the history of ever. I would
want to see that alternate universe version. Yes.
That would be amazing. I love this so much.
Okay, what about this, guys? Mickey Rourke turned down the role of Johnny Ringo. Kyle, what do you think?
If I have a feeling if Mickey Rourke had been cast, he would have probably had more lines. But
yeah,
this is interesting because I do think it would make the role of Johnny Ringo a bit bigger. I mean, I love Michael Biehn as much as the next person, but that's an interesting time frame for Mickey Rourke. He hadn't quite gone off the deep end yet.
Yeah. So a line quoted by Doc at the end of the fight at the OK Corral is historically true and was reported in the Tombstone papers reporting the fight. When confronted by one of the cowboys at point blank range, the cowboy reportedly said, "I got you now, Doc, you son of a bitch," to which Doc gleefully retorted, "You're a daisy if you do." Love that. The expression, "I'm your huckleberry," spoken by Doc, means "I'm the perfect man for the job." It could be indeed a reference to Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, then known as the sidekick of Tom Sawyer before Huck got his own book. Guys, I think that the most two famous quotes in this movie, because I've seen them on shirts, are "You're a daisy if you do," and "I'll be your huckleberry." Who owns that shirt? I almost got one. No. When the Earps first enter Tombstone, a grave marker in the cemetery says, "Here lies Lester Moore, 4 slugs from a 44, no less, no more." A real-life tombstone in Tombstone, Arizona, with the epitaph has been on display for at least 60 years. Lester Moore was a Wells Fargo agent murdered in Naco, Arizona in 1880 by Hank Dunston. Dunston also died in the fight and was buried in Naco. Did you guys know that? I didn't know that.
I did
Did not know that.
To me,
Val
that sounds like one of those tombstones outside the haunted mansion.
I know, right?
Here we lie, our good friend Gordon, and he finally crossed the River Jordan. Like it has that to it. Like,
It does. It does. Val Kilmer practiced a long time for his quick draw speed and gave his character a Southern aristocrat accent. The Southern accent is authentic touch, as Holliday was a cousin several generations removed of Margaret Mitchell, author of Gone with the Wind. There you go. And Robert Mitchum was signed on to star as Old Man Clanton prior to principal photography. He fell from his horse and injured his back, forcing him to quit the part. Instead, Mitchum provided the narration at the beginning and the end of the film. I thought that was a really nice touch to have Mitchum come in and do that. I know who Mitchum is. I'm a big fan of Mitchum. Lee, your thoughts on Mitchum?
I absolutely love it. I wasn't aware of Robert Mitchum until Get Shorty, when John Travolta starts talking about it. I'm like, oh, I wonder who this is. And suddenly watched all of his movies. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, this is cool. And that's cool to include him. And of course, the guy you're probably going to recommend or talk about next. So.
Okay. Oh, yeah, Kyle.
I just want to chime in on Robert Mitchum. I think he's a phenomenal actor. I cannot think of the name of the movie for the life of me at the moment, but one of my favorite roles of his is where he's playing the evil preacher, chasing the kids down, and he has love and hate tattooed on his fingers.
Is that Cape Fear?
No,
he wasn't in Cape Fear, was he? Was he in the original Cape Fear?
Was the original?
Yeah, I think it was the original.
I don't think it was the original Cape Fear.
Yeah.
I know. I'm going to have to IMDb it because I'll know it.
Yeah, let me know. In reality, Johnny Ringo did not die at the hands of Doc Holliday. On July 14th, 1882, Ringo's body was found lying against the trunk of a large tree in West Turkey Creek Valley near Chiricahua Peak in Arizona Territory. A neighboring property owner heard a single shot on the afternoon of July 13th and discovered Ringo's body the following day. His feet were wrapped in strips of cloth, torn from his undershirt, probably because his horse had gotten loose from its picket and bolted with his boots tied to the saddle. Sounds like he might have committed suicide here, it looks like. Yeah. So,
Kevin?
but yeah.
Night of the Hunter. The Night of the Hunter.
I've never seen that. What year did that come out?
That came out in 1955.
1955. So during the famous gunfight, this is the last bit of trivia, guys, members of the two opposing parties were initially only about 6 feet apart. That's close. And about 30 shots were fired in 13 seconds. Lee, when you look back at that fight in this film, and I've watched the special features of this, I don't know if you have, when it comes to the actual fight and the time that they did to try to make it as accurate as possible, with the exception of the 3 shots from the double-barreled shotgun, how did you like that scene?
They caught the insanity and chaos of a quick gunfight very well. Yeah. A lot of times, speaking of Quick and the Dead, the long shots, the push-ins, all the crazy stuff like that you can do to stretch a fight out. They didn't do that. They made it very claustrophobic, which fights are. They made it intense and like chaotic, which fights are. And they put people in danger, which fights do. I thought it was all really fun. I do wish Thomas Hayden Church would have done something with that cool knife. I've always wanted one. The Bowie knife with little
right
twirler handle there. Yeah,
it's a good point. Yeah, it was a very cool knife. So one of the things that I always like to talk about in these segments of these movies, of course, is the physical media, guys. And let's go ahead and talk about a little bit of maybe a laser disc. I do have the Laserdisc, and I also have the DVD and the Blu-ray. And that original DVD, the weird kind of cardboard snapshot thing, that was the first one that came out in 2002, I think it was this one right here that I'm holding in my hand, and that is centered in the pictures of the DVD and Blu-ray releases there, guys. Just want to show this one really quick. This one's my favorite. This is actual DVD release, not the Blu-ray. And this is the director's cut, which has about 6 minutes of extra footage, which I will be talking about shortly because there is some scenes that they do put in there. But one of my favorite things about this DVD release is it comes with a old map replica of the actual diagram, the gunfight at the OK Corral, the beginning, as illustrated in Wyatt Earp's own hand in 1919. And he shows where everyone is standing and where things started, where they talk to the sheriff and all that kind of stuff. And it's a great little thing. It's almost worth framing. I got to mention that. So if you ever see these in the wild, make sure to pick one of these up, especially if it still has this thing in there. Kyle, did you get this on physical media when it first came out?
Oh yeah, I definitely bought this on physical media. I had that original slap shut DVD cover, and by the time I got around to upgrading it was to a digital version, which I have on iTunes.
Nice. What about you, Lee?
Yeah, I had that. Like I said, I had that DVD. Went with me to Paris. The same one that you just showed, actually. Remember picking that up shortly before leaving. Classic. You got to love the 2-disc sets. You got to love behind the scenes. You're one of the few people I know that I never need to ask if you've seen the behind the scenes because you're like me. You're weird.
Exactly. I did get the Blu-ray just because I had to, but it's not the extended director's cut. I'm hoping that maybe we'll get a 4K of it in the future that has both options on it. There's a few scenes in it that they add, and I do want to talk about that, guys. And I'm going to mention a few of the more notable scenes that were added in the director's cut here. First of all, you get a little extended scene between Maddie and Wyatt Earp about her and her drug use. You get another scene where you see kind of basically Doc Holliday kind of drinking himself to death, basically. And he's one of the signs says, "Close your eyes with holy dread." And then you get an extended scene of Doc Holliday's girlfriend, basically, him leaving her, and there's a little more emotion to it, which is pretty cool. But the one scene they add, which I definitely thought was needed because it confused me, and I need to ask you guys about this, and that's the famous McMaster scene, because this scene was cut out of the theatrical as well as the DVD for a while, and I was always confused with it. Now, to backtrack of the listeners that are watching this, remember that the McMasters, who's played by I'm drawing a blank.
Michael Rooker.
Michael Rooker. He's the one that defects to our hero side, so to speak. To I don't know what did they call themselves? What are they? The sheriffs, the law.
Cowboys.
No. He leaves the Cowboys to go to.
They were marshals. They were
marshals. The Wyatt Earp side. Yeah, and.
Wyatt Earp and his immortals.
Exactly. There you go. Thank you. So we don't see the scene where he says, "Well, let me go talk to them." Basically, I'm paraphrasing here, because who joins the Cowboys is Sheriff Biehn. You don't really see a lot of that, and that's maybe one of the little things I have a problem with it, because when McMasters is looking through his spy scope from a distance where Val Kilmer's hurting on a horse and they need to get him shelter for the night, you see Biehn running with these cowboys, and he has a sheriff badge, including Jason Priestley's character. But we don't really get anything more from Biehn after that. But McMasters goes in this deleted scene and meets up with them. But we don't see that originally. And so all we see is this body being dragged by one of the cowboys. And at the time, I didn't really know who McMasters was because there were so many people in this movie. And I realized this is the scene that we should have seen, and you get to see it, where he goes and, Johnny Ringo says, "You're a cowboy, not a dog catcher." And then, of course, Ike Clanton says, "Just one thing. How are you going to get back to them?" And, of course, you don't see it, but they do shoot him, and they kill him, and they drag his body back to the good guys, basically, and says, "Johnny Ringo will be waiting for you," and blah, 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 blah. Did you guys know that was McMasters right away? And did you know who he was? Because for a while, I didn't, Lee.
I did. Probably because when I saw this the first time, I had already seen Mallrats, and I'm like, "Oh, cool! It's Mr. Svenning." So he was just like one of these people that
with a stinky hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
He came down with a sudden case of diphtheria.
Yeah.
By the way, I have 2 friends that were in that movie, so upcoming CPT, we got to do it. But yeah, this was one of those. This and Billy Zane's Mr. Fabian.
Yeah.
Like, why we didn't see those? That's the kind of thing. Like, I wish would have.
He just shows up. Yeah. He just shows up shot, basically.
Yeah, and suddenly we have Jason Priestley riding with those guys with no preamble. We just knew that he was a theater aficionado before that. Like, and Biehn's kind of a groupie.
He was kind of a groupie. The way he was painted. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I really wish we would have seen this because you talk about a guy having an interesting character arc. When he drops the sash and says, "Well, I'll ride with you guys," like that was he had a great story in this that just kind of stood in the shadows.
Kyle, do you remember this? Do you remember this being McMasters, the guy whose body was dragged? And
yeah, I do, because of the stand-up moment with the sash really stood out for me in that. And then that's the thing, though, and when I talk about earlier with this movie, how it's so tight, but there are a few scenes I still think we should have seen Ike get his comeuppance. I think we should have seen the sheriff get his comeuppance, because really you don't see him again until that chase scene where you see Ike throw the sash, and then one of the shots you see the sheriff riding with them. It's kind of a forgotten thing.
Yeah.
Ike gets away 3 different times in this film. First of all, he gets away from being shot in the head in the beginning with the standoff when they're trying to take Curly Bill to jail. And then he throws his hands up again in the OK Corral and survives that. And then he survives again when he throws his sash and he's getting chased. Oh, and he gets survived again at the train station when his buddy gets shot, and he's given the message by Wyatt Earp, "Tell him I'm coming." So it's 4 times he runs away. He gets out of there. Yeah. Anyway, I do recommend the extended version. I don't think all the scenes are vital, but it's nice to see them. And to me, it doesn't really, they don't really, like you said, Kyle, this movie's very well paced, and it's only an extra 6 minutes. And this scene, I think, is a really good payoff here with McMasters. Yeah. Lee.
I was going to go back to the previous slide. In the Wyatt Earp movies, Matty Blaylock and Big Nose Kate both had much more well-rounded roles, and you kind of get a sense of like the turmoil of of Wyatt being in love with the actress, but you also get Isabella Rossellini was playing Big Nose Kate in the Kevin Costner, just a fantastic performance. That one was one that deserved an Oscar nod, and I believe it was Keira Sedgwick played Matty Blaylock in the Kevin Costner one, but I feel like those would have rounded out some of the sides a little bit better.
Well, guys, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I want to get your now and then segment that I like to put in these Couch Potato Theaters sometimes. Your perspective then and your perspective now, has it changed? This movie obviously has endured for a while. I remember someone calling it a cult film. I'm like, nah, it's not a cult film anymore, but it's definitely one of those movies that has endured, especially when you rank just great ensemble casts, because there's a lot of good movies that have that. Westerns, of course. As we said, great Oscar-worthy performances that weren't recognized. Lee, I want to start with you.
Mine's gone up and down over the years. As much as I can criticize a lot of the parts of this, I still enjoy it. So this is one perfect couch potato movie. I'll probably still watch this 10 more times before I die. So
nice. Kyle, what about you, man? Where does this stand? Perspective.
I think it's very much stands its own place in history, because at the time Westerns weren't that huge, and Westerns have always kind of gone through a cycle in Hollywood. In fact, I think we're kind of in a high Western cycle right now, thanks to Yellowstone and the work Kayla Sheridan's been doing with his other shows. You've got The Lawmen, Bass Reeves out right now, a few other things. So I think we're in a cycle where Westerns are kind of in recognition. And
we had True Grit a while ago too. Yeah, the remake.
But I think this one just stands on its own pedestal in the aspect, again, of the amazing Val Kilmer performance, the cast that is in this movie, and just it's still, in my opinion, I'll say this without ease, it's one of the most rewatchable Western films of all time.
Yeah, I would agree with you personally. Yeah. One of the things that I really pay extra attention to, especially with the special features and what they, and we do know that, the director, Cosmatos,
George Cosmatos.
Yeah, George Cosmatos, that he's the director, but of course we do know that Kurt stepped in and took control on a lot of stuff. But when you watch all the special features, you see George on there. You see George doing his things, and of course I'm sure that was done on purpose. But when you see him interviewed, he gets the movie. He understands what they're trying to do here. And I love the fact that this town was a boom town, silver, all kinds of stuff. A lot of rich people came here because they were making money here, and they would show off their wealth, whether it's these nice clothes, their jewelry. And they talked about that in the behind the scenes, and the things that they would wear, the things that they would possess. Meanwhile, there was the regular people that, the second class citizens, as you could probably say, that weren't so lucky, the ones that Virgil, kind of stood up for when he realized that he wanted to, take on, the problems of the cowboys and the rest of the crime that was taken here. And this was all filmed in Arizona. They did a great job with the sets. They did a great job with trying to make Tombstone as, the town as realistic as Tombstone was. And, I know they took some liberties with what happened, but, you can go back and read the original newspaper reports and the reporting on it. Even though everything's not obviously accurate, to me, this feels like the best movie interpretation of what happened there. And we have to remember too, and I touched on it earlier, that what happened in Tombstone sent messages everywhere when it came to handling crime, how not just desperate, but how calculated lawmen were going to become, even if they had to kind of act like some of the villains to get rid of these really bad people and put them behind bars and eventually just kill them. That's why they called it the Wild West. It's one of those things where the lawmen had a lot of power, and sometimes it was abused. It's true. But with someone like Wyatt Earp, he had a reputation. He was respected. He was feared. And I love the fact that after he retired, he was brought on as, when they were filming Westerns, he was an advisor. He was a rock star when it came to those early Westerns, especially when you think about the people, when he passed away, the people that were his pallbearers, the famous people like Tom Mix and all these other famous Western people at the time. And I like that one thing that you learned while watching this was that Kurt Russell really kind of got that he had a horrible conscience and he had to deal with it somehow. And he found a woman to help him live a life. And I would like to see that story. I want to see them on their own story and their adventures, maybe it'll be a Hallmark movie. I don't know. But anyway, I just want to give you guys any final thoughts on Tombstone as we wrap this up, Lee.
I'd go on and on because I have not yet begun to defile myself, but this is one, it's just fun. I do love the bad Latin because it's bad. It's not very well translated, but it's fun or well written out. But yeah, I was this close.
Wait, hold on. You know Latin, right?
Close enough, yeah.
What were they saying there at the bar? Because it's not subtitled.
Well, in vino veritas means it basically in wine is truth. Magicoragis and magisterium. Here is my. I keep my my strength by my side. Basically, kind of like, hey, I'll shoot you if you keep talking. I'd need to go back and do it, but there's some poor conjugations in there. But
Right.
It was still like it's sort of the kind of like you have to be a true dork to know what they were saying, And I honestly think that it was a throwback to Lonesome Dove, because they had one of the main characters kept on saying things in Latin and nobody was there to say whether he was lying or not.
That's a good point. Yeah. Kyle, Lee knows Latin. That's pretty cool. I forgot about that. He's smart. Your final thoughts on Tombstone, and thank you, by the way, for coming in while I know you're feeling a little under the weather.
Yeah, I'm ready for some more Latinum here in just a minute. But sure, it's the same bottle, guys. It's really the same bottle. But this is the quintessential couch potato theater film. This is a film that is made in a way that it is from the get-go, you're drawn into it. It's amazing performances. It's one of those movies that you can pick up at any point and finish it and watch it, or just watch those couple of scenes you have the time for and go from there. It is on a pedestal of its own, as I said earlier, especially for that time frame of Westerns as when it comes out. And I mean, I just, it's completely quotable. It doesn't stop. It's just, like I said, it's about as perfect of a couch potato theater film you can get. And that's why it's here on Couch Potato Theater. And some of my, like I said, if nothing else out of this movie, it is, in my opinion, the greatest performance of Val Kilmer's career.
I would completely agree with you there. Well said. When I was rewatching this for this podcast, I started it right, and you get the beginning. You get the intro by, of course, Robert Mitchum, and then you get the cowboys doing their dastardly deeds at the church and the wedding. And then I was hungry, and I realized, wait a minute, I need to pause this because I am ready to dive deep into this. And I watched it completely, didn't even look at my phone. And I just realized, as Kyle said, it is completely rewatchable. And there's just so many wonderful scenes in this. It's well paced. And I really got to give it up to Kurt Russell too, because he did a really good job diving into this. And just with everyone growing their own beards and mustaches, and Ike Clanton being drunk, apparently, Stephen Lang being the method actor that he is on set. Go for it, man. I love it. I love all of these different details that really put this awesome movie together. So, all right, guys, let's go ahead and close things out here. All right, guys, this is Couch Potato Theater, of course, here on the Fandom Podcast Network. And if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you very much. Please like and subscribe. We'd appreciate that. And share it out. Comments down below. We want to know what you guys say. We appreciate that. The Fandom Podcast Network, of course, is on Facebook. And our master feed for all our audio podcasts are fpnet.podbean.com. Got to say that right there. fpnet.podbean.com. And also, please follow us on all of your major podcast platforms, Apple Podcast, iTunes, among others. As I mentioned, we're on Facebook. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Fandom Podcast Network is also on Instagram and Twitter. My name is Kevin Reitzel. I am on Twitter /X now. And I'm at Spartan_Phoenix, as well as there on Instagram and Threads. Kyle, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter /X at AKyleW, or on Instagram and Threads at AKyleFandom.
Awesome. Lee, where can we find you? Because, for those of you that don't know, but maybe you do know or don't know, Lee is my co-host for our Highlander Blood of Kings podcast. Love talking immortality with you as well, but where can we find you?
Right behind you. I'm waiting. You can find me on...
That was creepy, but well done.
Thank you. You can find me on Instagram at The Way of the Way. You can find me on Facebook under my name, Lee Fillingsness. You can also follow my production company, Madman Road, and my stunt and martial arts company, Double Action Martial Arts. Always doing weird, crazy stuff.
Awesome. That's very cool, man. Very cool. Appreciate everything that you're doing, posting all the pictures of your work and being safety conscious as well. Always respect that and appreciate that.
That's
all right, guys.
Job.
Yes. Again, please, like I said, if your podcast provider allows reviews, give us reviews. We appreciate that. And until next time, thank you for joining us here on the Fandom Podcast Network for the special presentation of Tombstone 1993, celebrating its 30th anniversary. I'd like to thank, of course, my brother Kyle and also my very good friend and co-host of Bloody Kings, Lee Fillingsness. Until next time, we will see you on the couch. Thank you and goodbye, everyone.